In the previous video, we have learned types of angles. Today, we are going to learn adjacent angles. Let's have two angles, angle ABC and angle DEF. If we combine these two angles, it is called adjacent angles. If you observe carefully, line BC and line DE overlap each other. So, this is the common arm, and the point, let's say, a point O, is the common point, or vertex. This is a pair of adjacent angles. Let's say, the first angle is angle POQ, and the second angle is angle ROQ. Such pairs of angles that are formed by a common arm and a common point are known as adjacent angles. Let's have some examples. In this figure, angle AOC and angle BOC are adjacent angles. Same as angle WOX, angle XOY, and angle YOZ are adjacent angles. Remember, angle WOX and angle YOZ are not adjacent angles. Adjacent angles should have common arm, common vertex, and angles should lie on opposite sides of the common arm. All three conditions should be applied. Angle WOX and angle YOZ don't have common arm. Let's have some more examples. In this figure, angle POQ and angle ROQ are adjacent angles. Same as angle ABD, angle DBE, and angle CBE are adjacent angles. Remember, angle ABD and angle ABE are not adjacent angles. Adjacent angles should have a common arm, common vertex, and angles should lie on opposite sides of the common arm. All three conditions should be applied. Angle ABD and angle ABE don't lie on opposite sides. One more thing you should remember about adjacent angles. Adjacent angles always exist as pairs. There are a few more important concepts in this video. The first one is complementary angles. Two angles are known as complementary angles if they add up to 90 degrees. A pair of adjacent angles can also be complementary angles if the sum of the adjacent angles equals 90 degrees. In this figure, there are three adjacent angles. In other words, there are two pairs of adjacent angles. But the three adjacent angles, or the pair of two adjacent angles, are not complementary angles. Complementary angles should have only two angles, or a pair of angles. Now, the second one is supplementary angles. Two angles are known as supplementary angles if they add up to 180 degrees. A pair of adjacent angles can also be supplementary angles if the sum of the adjacent angles equals 180 degrees. In this figure, there are three adjacent angles. In other words, there are two pairs of adjacent angles. But the three adjacent angles, or the pair of two adjacent angles, are not supplementary angles. Supplementary angles should have only two angles, or a pair of angles. Let's do a quick review of all of the new concepts. Two angles are adjacent angles when they have a common side, a common vertex, and angles lie on the opposite side of each other. All of the three conditions should be applied. These all are not adjacent angles. In the first figure, there isn't a common side. In the second figure, there isn't a common vertex. In the third figure, angles don't lie on the opposite side. And in the last figure, angles are not combined. Whereas, complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. And supplementary angles are two angles that add up to 180 degrees. Complementary angles form a right angle. Supplementary angles form a straight angle. Complementary and supplementary angles are not bound with these three conditions. They may have a common side, or not. They may have a common vertex, or not. They may lie on the opposite side, or not. Complementary and supplementary angles may have all of these three conditions, or not any of them. One thing which is resemble with all of them: adjacent angles, complementary angles, and supplementary angles. They all exist as pairs,